At 7, Captain Ibrahim Traore is the youngest African president and easily the most trending African president. He came to power in September 2022 via a coup which got rid of the then president Paul Henry Damiba, who ironically had also come to power via a coup 8 months earlier. So, Paul Henry Damiba came through a coup and was removed via a coup. You see, in Burkina Faso, coups happen more frequently than Arsenal can win trophies. The irony is, Burkina Faso inotungwa ni maganas. In fact, no other African country has had more coups than Burkina Faso, which has a record 9 successful coups. That's an insane level of military dominance in national politics. It means Captain Ibrahim Traore is probably doing the most dangerous presidential job on the African continent, and it's not even an overstatement. He has actually survived various assassination attempts, further proving how dangerous his job is. Well, in this video, we're going to take a look at Burkina Faso's coup history with a special focus on Traore Sankara and Ibrahim Traore. As you know, when I go in, I go deeper than your favorite papa, plus ndonya toti DD, anungoti papa. Papa ndevu zangu zakagerwa na baba. Haha, fellow Sadza eaters, slay queens and bingers, socialites, papalites, wasinamalites, parkujgarais, nevasinamarites. Welcome to the special report. On 30 September 2022, armed soldiers loyal to Captain Ibrahim Traore appeared on Burkina Faso state television to announce the coup which got rid of the then president Paul Henry Damiba, a man who had also come to power via a coup 8 months earlier. You see, Ibrahim Traore was amongst the junior officers who supported Paul Henry Damiba's coup in January 2022. At the time, the president of Burkina Faso was Roch Kabore. He had been in power since 2015. Kabore's first presidential term, however, coincided with the beginning of Islamic insurgency in Burkina Faso. As we speak, it is estimated that around 40% of Burkina Faso is under the control of rebel groups. And to be clear, these rebel groups are jihadists. They are doing pretty much what Boko Haram has been doing in Nigeria. Boko Haram is a Nigeria-based group that seeks to overthrow the current Nigerian government and replace it with a government strictly based on Islamic law. Well, I should say their interpretation of Islamic law. Because you see, just like the Bible, the Quran is interpreted differently by different people for different reasons. So, the Islamic insurgency in Burkina Faso is about creating an Islamic state in Burkina Faso. So this insurgency has seen the government of Burkina Faso losing control of up to 40% of its territory. Successive governments have struggled to deal with this crisis since 2015. Remember, in earnest, this crisis started during President Kabore's first term and continued to deteriorate, with rebel groups gaining territory day by day. By late 2021, a humanitarian crisis was evident in many parts of Burkina Faso, with thousands getting killed and almost 2 million displaced. So therefore, faced with such calamity, many officers in the Burkina Faso military lost confidence in President Kabore's capacity to end the insurgency. That is what led to the January 2022 coup, which ushered in the military government of Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Damiba. So Paul Henry Damiba became president. However, his tenure as president only lasted 8 months. It didn't take long for his military to turn against him. He led a coup against Kabore with the aim of dealing with the Islamic insurgency. But once he got to power, he forgot the goal. He got too comfortable, and his military decided to dump him. And dump him they did. As I said, They felt that his priorities had shifted and that he had forgotten the reason why they had put him in power. Repeatedly, military officers urged Damiba to refocus on the insurgency, but he wouldn't yield. And so, in September 2022, 8 months after he had taken power, Damiba was removed by a coup which was led by this man, Captain Ibrahim Traore. But Traore was quickly dismissed as just another coup leader, yet another junta chief. What's new in the streets of Africa? And given the general bleak outlook of Burkina Faso coups, very few expected him to excel. So many started spreading shit. I apologize about the strong language, I just couldn't resist the Microsoft wordplay. But here is the PowerPoint. Day by day, Ibrahim Traore is redefining what it means to be an African president, especially in the context of neocolonialism. He has changed the perception of many Africans on the subject of democracy and coups. After all, what is democracy in the context of African politics? Many African countries have been pretending to vote, with such elections always producing disputed outcomes each and every time. Is it democracy when citizens don't have the freedom to freely choose a candidate of their choice? Is it democracy when voters are frog-marched to political rallies of ruling parties? Where is democracy when demagoguery is used as a weapon to outmaneuver opposition parties during the campaign period? Where is democracy when rallies of opposition parties are banned? Where is democracy when opposition leaders get arbitrarily arrested and denied bail? And when citizens get incarcerated merely for demanding for transparency, equality and justice? Where is democracy when those in power are looting, while the people's dreams wither like petals on a forsaken vine? So people are now saying, if the military steps in to correct all these anomalies, then such coups can be described as democratic coups. You know, politicians have failed when people start looking up to the military to provide leadership. This is the situation Ibrahim Traore finds himself in. He, together with other officers in the Burkina Faso military, helped Lieutenant Colonel Damiba to take power in January 2022 in order to clean the mess created by politicians. And when Damiba deviated from the course, Ibrahim Traore stepped up and removed him. He said, "I will do it myself." It's been over 2 years now, and Traore is still at it. His Pan-African stance in particular has won him so much praise across the African continent, having cut all ties with France due to its neo-colonialist tendencies. As we all know, Burkina Faso is a former French colony. It used to be one of 8 African countries which made up the French West Africa Federation. These are Senegal, Mali, Niger, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Benin, and of course, Burkina Faso. All these countries were once part of one big colony of France, which was called French West Africa. It was a federation. Some of these countries had colonial names. Mali was known as French Sudan. Benin was known as Dahomey. Burkina Faso was known as Upper Volta. It was Thomas Sankara who renamed the Upper Volta to Burkina Faso. He did this in 1984, but we'll get to this later. Burkina Faso initially became a self-governing colony in 1958, but gained full independence in 1960 with Maurice Yamiogo as its first president. As was the culture in various African countries, Yamiogo quickly turned Burkina Faso into a one-party state, which soon became a dictatorship. A social, political and economic instability followed. By the end of 1965, Burkina Faso was almost ungovernable with widespread protests. I keep saying Burkina Faso just to make it relatable. Otherwise, at this point, Burkina Faso was known as the Upper Volta, and as I said, its president was Maurice Yamiogo, who had become so unpopular due to the worsening economic crisis. He introduced new taxes and cut civil servant pay by 20% in a bid to reduce government spending and close budget deficits in order to free up funds for other priorities. These measures created discontent and protests in much of the country. In the end, the calls to fix the economy soon turned into calls for the president to step down. But just like a typical African president, Maurice Yamiogo refused to step down. He declared a state of emergency and sent his police to clamp down on protesters. By doing this, Yamiogo had just poured petrol into the fire because protests soon became violent. And so, on 3 January 1966, the military, led by Lieutenant Colonel Lamizana, who was chief of staff, stepped in to seize power in a bloodless coup. The military had been watching the growing chaos and the government's inability to restore order. Lamizana and his fellow officers suspended the constitution, dissolved the National Assembly, and arrested the president, who was later exiled. The military justified the takeover as a necessary action to stabilize the country, end corruption, and address the social, economic, and political problems. This became Burkina Faso's first coup, sowing the seeds of 8 more coups that would germinate in Burkina Faso. So after the first coup in 1966, there was another one in 1980 led by Colonel Zebo. And 2 years later, Colonel Zebo was removed in yet another coup led by Major Jean Ouedraogo. When Major Jean Ouedraogo took over as president, he appointed Thomas Sankara as prime minister in January 1983. However, Sankara's radical views and growing popularity made him a polarizing figure. His revolutionary rhetoric and policies clashed with those of President Ouedraogo. In May 1983, Ouedraogo dismissed Sankara as prime minister and placed him under house arrest. This was met with a lot of resistance from Sankara's supporters, particularly those in the military. And so, on the 4th of August 1983, a group of military officers loyal to Sankara but led by Captain Blaise Compaoré staged a coup. This coup resulted in Sankara taking over as president. He renamed the country Burkina Faso, meaning land of upright people. Remember, up to now, Burkina Faso had been known as Upper Volta. Sankara's presidency, which lasted from 1983 to 1987, was marked by ambitious reforms, including land reform and various anti-imperialist policies which threatened France's neo-colonialist agenda. And by the way, Sankara reduced salaries of senior government officials, including his own. He established popular revolutionary tribunals to try corrupt officials publicly. He rejected loans from the IMF and World Bank, arguing that they were designed to keep developing countries in chains. He focused on domestic revenue generation to reduce foreign dependence. But of course, he was no saint. He also banned opposition parties. He banned trade unions and restricted media freedoms. He dismissed 2,500 striking teachers in 1984 and executed 7 individuals linked to the previous government for treason. So, while he wasn't perfect, you can see how different he was in his approach to politics and his attitude towards foreign domination. His total disregard of France's perceived superiority rattled and ruffled many feathers, not only in Paris, but also in various other Western capitals. That's why there is so much comparison between Sankara and Traore, with many saying Ibrahim Traore is the reincarnation of Sankara because he has explicitly invoked Sankara's revolutionary ideals, emphasizing self-reliance, anti-imperialism, and social justice. In fact, on October 15, 2022, Ibrahim Traore led a national ceremony marking the 35th anniversary of Sankara's assassination, pledging loyalty to his vision. Ibrahim Traore carries himself in the manner and fashion with which Sankara did, and in particular, Pan-Africanism. Traore has embraced a Pan-Africanist rhetoric, aligning Burkina Faso with Mali and Niger in the alliance of Sahel states to counter Western influence and promote regional cooperation. His speeches often invoke African pride and solidarity, similar to Sankara. Furthermore, both Sankara and Traore came to power at a relatively young age. Sankara was 33 and Traore 34. However, the way Sankara was removed from office has given many people reason to fear for Traore's safety. As we have already seen, Burkina Faso coups don't rain. No, they pour. However, the danger for Traore is not only just a coup. The real danger is actually how Sankara was eliminated. They didn't just remove him from power, no, they assassinated him. To this day, Thomas Sankara remains the only Burkina Faso head of state who was killed in a coup. All other coups in Burkina Faso did not claim the life of any president. So that's what makes it dangerous for Traore, because just like Sankara, he has threatened French interests, and that comes at a cost. That is the reason why there is a tight security around Ibrahim Traore at all times. He rarely shakes people's hands and always moves around in military gear with military protection even on international functions and platforms. In January 2025, Traore made headlines when he arrived at an inauguration ceremony in Ghana with a gun visibly seen on his waist. He is trying to avoid what happened to his idol, Thomas Sankara. And by the way, after Sankara was removed in 1987, there would be 4 more coups in Burkina Faso. In 2014, 2015, January 2022, and finally in September 2022. And as we all know, the September 2022 coup is the one which ushered in the presidency of Captain Ibrahim Traore, a man who has captured the imagination of many Africans, inspiring dreams of a self-reliant, equitable Africa. Traore is the definition of started from the bottom, now we're here. He was born on March 14, 1988 in Kera, a small town in Mahun province. He studied geology at the University of Ouagadougou and joined the Burkina Faso Army in 2009. He graduated from the Georges Namoane Military Academy and received anti-aircraft training in Morocco. By 2014, he was promoted to lieutenant and served in the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali, where he was recognized for his courage during rebel attacks. When he returned to Burkina Faso, Traore fought in counter-insurgency operations against jihadist groups in the north, earning a promotion to captain in 2020. By 2022, he was commanding an artillery regiment in Kaya, a northern town heavily affected by the insurgency. As we have seen throughout this video, Burkina Faso coups are almost always led by low-ranking officers. Traore himself was a captain. He is still referred to as captain. Low-ranking officers lead coups in Burkina Faso due to their direct exposure to security failures and how senior military leaders are disconnected from the reality on the ground. This is exactly what led to the Nari rebellion during the Zimbabwe liberation struggle. In future videos, I will do a video about this, the Nari rebellion. Anyway, back to the subject. There is a historical precedent in Burkina Faso for low-ranking military officers staging coups. You see, junior military commanders have the ability to harness public frustration. There is a phenomenon called youth exuberance. The idealism of young age is what often drives these military officers to rebel against their senior leaders. They do so believing that they will do a better job in addressing the issues. Low-ranking military commanders often inspire more devotion from troops under them than senior commanders. Their command of loyal units enables them to make rapid action. So weak institutions and external influences amplify their opportunities. This has been the story of Ibrahim Traore's rise. From a small town soldier to being Burkina Faso's leader, his ability to rally junior officers, navigate military and public discontent, and project a vision for national sovereignty has defined his leadership. Yet, the challenges of governing a fragile nation amid insurgency and political instability continue to test his regime. He has enemies from within and enemies from outside. But as we have seen, the enemies from outside are very powerful and they are prepared to do anything necessary in order to not only destabilize his country, but also to substitute him by elimination, by liquidation. Is he going to last? Well, whatever happens, I'll be here to marinate you with all the details without fear or favor, because on this platform, we say it as it is. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoy the content, please like and share.